This is the group presentation on a veterans group. So first off, we're going to start off with some basic stats to let you know kind of what's the need for this group. Um, Out of the entire population of the United States, there's about 7% that are veterans. That's about 24 million people, okay? Now, out of that 24 million people, they make up overall about 20% of all suicides per year. That's 22 suicides per day. So 7% of the population makes up 20% of the suicides. It's a lot. Furthermore, that 7% of the population also makes up about 30% of the prison population. Um, if we controlled for age statistics there, they'd actually make up about 45% of the population. So that 7% of the population is about half of the prison population. On top of that, rates of PTSD among veterans, for specifically the Vietnam era veterans, is about 30% of all veterans in Vietnam will develop PTSD throughout their lifetime. And for Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, it's about 5 to 15%. That's quite a bit higher than the overall population of the United States. On top of that, that 7% of the population accounts for 11% of the overall homeless population. So if we look at some of the numbers there, we see that there's something going on with the veteran community that tells us there's some mental health issue going on with them. As far as starting the group goes, because the veteran community already feels like a somewhat of a inclusive group, you have to have had military service. You're usually acknowledged for that. You have some type of special benefits. It's some type of special group already. This group can be either an open group or a closed group. That unity that they already feel often can help an open group facilitate well and builds a layer of trust there that people can come into. Screening, if you're going to do a closed group, things to consider would be, well, they have to be a veteran, one. What type of service did they have? Were they honorably discharged or were they dishonorably discharged? Kind of what standing were they under? Are we specifically dealing only with combat veterans here? Or veterans in general? And are we also just doing one veteran cohort? Like, are we doing Vietnam veterans, or is this all veterans across the board? And that can get tricky. So deciding what you're going to do on that is important. Furthermore, are you going to do a specific branch? Is this just an Army group? Is it a Navy group, Marines, Air Force, or Coast Guard? Or is it an intergroup or inter-branch group? That would be important to consider as well. What exactly is going to be the goal of the group, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. Also, some poor candidates would be some veterans with chronic or severe PTSD, and then also substance abuse. They might not be at a place to be able to participate in a group. The goal of the group, actually, you can have varied amounts of, or varied goals for the group, especially with a veterans group. So PTSD would be a one goal, working with that. Also, substance abuse and recovery could be another goal, going back to those poor candidates. Third goal, you could also have making sense of the military service. What was that time like for them? A fourth goal would also be vocation or identity restructuring. A lot of people that went into the military formed an identity and consequently had a job that now doesn't really work in the day-to-day life. So how do they restructure that? And then fifth could be reintegration to society as a whole. It can be hard going from a structured lifestyle to a very unstructured lifestyle. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to focus in specifically on making sense of military service. Some of the anticipated issues that might be coming up as you're forming this group is inter-service competition. Army doesn't like the Navy, Navy doesn't like the Army, Marines don't like anybody, and everybody looks down on the Air Force. So it could all be really difficult there. Furthermore, a military environment doesn't really promote a context of vulnerability. So having group members open up might be a difficult thing to draw out of them. On top of that is if you do have comorbid issues such as PTSD or substance abuse, which is very likely, those could interfere with the group process. So appropriate techniques, you have a couple of appropriate techniques there, but for the Making Sense group, I'm going to focus in on the existential approaches and the narrative approaches. I think these are excellent approaches for making sense of what their military service time has been and what to do with that narrative that they've developed in the present. So group members' roles, they need to bring their stories. They need to be willing to explore the meaning of their stories in service. They need to be willing to resolve barriers to telling their stories. Oftentimes they won't want to talk about it. There's various issues for that, and depending on the issue, whether it's people won't understand or is too difficult, on some level we need them to bring their stories to this group. They also need to hear other people's experiences. It helps them kind of make sense of what's going on. And the final thing is hopefully they'll find community or a sense of belonging and solidarity. Ethical considerations, you always got confidentiality. Suicidal ideation could really come up in a group like this. How are you going to handle that? And then something to talk about with the group is making meaning for another person. We don't want to ascribe meaning to other people's narratives here. We want to hear them make the meaning themselves. So, problems. In the initial stage, you might have a fogginess about what the goal is. I think the biggest thing is going to be, can I trust other people and can I trust the leader in this group? As well as, depending on what rank they were or where they were in military service, members might try to take on the leadership role. In the transition stage, lack of vulnerability is going to be where it's at. You'll have probably conflict as well. Military members like to butt heads, are usually somewhat aggressive. So dealing with the conflict and then also dealing with the lack of vulnerability is going to be the big thing. In the working stage, having empathy for another person and being able to listen to them is something that the military doesn't exactly foster. So being able to develop that, as well as cohesion. And this would be especially if you have inter-branch groups, so cohesion between members of the Navy versus the Army versus Marines, Air Force, and Coast Guard. If you can get them all into, we're veterans, and bring cohesion there, and our stories have similarities, even though they have differences, that'd be great. Ending stage, big things are going to be like, how does this transition to real life? And then also, I found my group and I don't want to leave it now. Definitely be things that come up here. Theoretical approach, this is going to depend on what kind of group you're leading. Because I'm doing the Making Sense of Military Service group, I'm going with the existential and narrative group. Existential has been proven to be extremely effective for working with Vietnam veterans, especially with Vietnam veteran couples. You have the reference there. And narrative, I think, is uniquely suited to saying, what happened during that time? What kind of meaning am I ascribing to it? What would I prefer that to say? And then how do I live my life now based out of that? And where do I want to see this going into the future? Furthermore, some of the existential themes such as freedom and responsibility and the chronic anxiety that humanity faces, I think are especially relevant for a veterans group. In the weeks 1 through 3, you're going to look at forming the group contracts, developing personal goals, and kind of telling what an effective narrative is, because sometimes these guys and gals just want to tell stories. 4 through 6, you're going to be looking at here's what my military service looked like and having them tell those narratives, and then also helping them to listen to other people's narratives, and then drawing out themes of people's service time and linking those themes together. 7 through 9 would actually be, what would I prefer my narrative of my military service to be like? And then how does that narrative affect me now? And then 10 through 12 would be, what do I want to do with what I've learned about myself in this period? And what do I do with the responsibility and freedom I have? And specifically, I'd like to focus in on them getting into a new community, somewhere that they belong. At the end here, you have a list of references. A lot of those websites are extremely helpful, and a couple of them actually have entire group guidelines for going through with veterans. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. Have a good day.